Okay, so welcome to this Meet the Funder session today. We're going to talk about the One Oldham Fund median grants for community centres. I'll give a little bit of background and guidance. I'll do a really short presentation, followed by a Q&A, and we've got loads of time for a chat afterwards. I'm going to record the first part of this presentation so that I can circulate it to other people who've not been able to attend, and I'll also be sending a copy of the slides around, so you don't need to take notes of anything that's on the slides. Okay, so just a really quick introduction to our grant making principles. A lot of you will already be aware of these, but we've spent a lot of time to adapt our grants processes over the years, and we're now registered as an open and trusted grant maker, which means that we have various commitments. So we commit to be open, not wasting time. We only ask relevant questions. We accept a little bit of risk. We know that it's not always possible for you to say right at the start of an application exactly what you want to do with your grant. We'll act with urgency as much as we can. We're trusting, so that enables flexibility, and we appreciate things change during the process of a grant, during the life of a grant. We try to communicate with purpose, and we've tried to be proportionate, especially with our monitoring. We have different levels of monitoring requirements for different types of grants. Okay. So the background to the One Oldham Fund. The One Oldham Fund, I think people here may have already heard of it, but it's basically a strategic investment fund where we pull different resources in, so that we've had the one fund, we have different strands within that fund, which may have different priorities. So for this particular pot of money that we're working with today, Oldham Council's allocated some of its comp money. You may have heard of that. It's the Contain Outbreak Management funding, which was received by the government, and that's been used to put into our single grant investment fund, and also it's been matched with some funding from the Action Oldham Fund, which is an old fund that's been in existence for a number of years, which was put together from dormitory funds. So this particular phase, this fund is going to focus on investment in our sector's resilience to enable organisations that are locally rooted and active in Oldham to remain viable and to contribute to the delivery of the Oldham Plan and Oldham's health and wellbeing strategy. On these slides, these are links. So if you wanted to look at either of those in any more detail, the links will be provided with the slides. So with the current round of funding that we have, the overall One Oldham Fund priorities are for projects that have a focus on reducing health inequalities and promoting preventable activity, and they meet one of the more of the following priorities. So that can be diverse opportunities to get together with regular activities to boost physical and mental health and community spirit. That can be supporting residents to gain knowledge and skills to confidently make choices and participate in decisions about their own life, their own health, giving children the best start in life, a clean, green and healthy environment, and a local area that meets people's needs and makes them proud. So this is the overarching priorities that have applied to the various strands within this current round of funding, with the micro grants and the small grants, which are now closed. Today, we're going to talk about the medium grants specifically. So for the medium grants, these are grants of up to £25,000, and they're specifically to support community centres based in Oldham that are or will be identified as key place-based sites to support the effective partnership working and delivery of front-facing services for residents closer to home as part of Oldham Council's place-based integration programme. That's the work in progress. I appreciate that. Some community centres are already having those discussions. Some are already placed and doing that. In terms of what a community centre means, I'll just go on to discuss that. But I think if you're thinking of applying for the grant, this is a really good starting point. It's that what we're really looking for is to fund those key place-based sites that support partnership working for the residents, so they can access services and access other things closer to home instead of having to travel half the way across the borough. So in terms of what is a community centre, oops, sorry, I've just gone forward there. what is a community centre? For this particular grant, it's really hard to define. We've done some work with our community centres forum, but for this particular grant, for this purpose, we've defined a community centre is an organisation that has all of the following features. So it's not for profit, which obviously fits with all our members. Incorporated, so that can either be registered charity, it can be registered at Companies House, such as being a KIC, it can be a charitable company. It's community-led and run. So that's really important in terms of looking at your governance structure. It's based at and occupying a community building that's rooted in a sense of place. So previously, in previous discussions, we've talked about community anchors, where that's more of a community of purpose. So it might be working with a particular community from across the whole of Oldham, but the focus is not on the place itself, not on the distinct locality. It's on a particular focus. So it might be a particular health issue or a particular section of the community. However, what we're looking at here is those buildings that are occupying and are rooted in a real sense of place. So it's like a hub, so to speak, in a particular locality. The next point is that a community centre must have multiple functions, including regular sessions that are open to the members of the community without charge and without the need to book in advance. So this came from a discussion that we had with the Community Centres Forum. We were trying to distinguish what really makes a community centre as opposed to a building that is a venue for hire. And I think the conclusion that the groups we talked with came to was that it's kind of people can drop in. You don't have to, as a group, you don't have to go in and book the centre. That can be part of it, but there's things going on all the time where people can drop in. You know, you might have citizens advice in there on particular days. You might have other services and partners from the council or housing services or other providers that are in there on different days. I mean, obviously, you're going to generate some income by building car, but that's not the sort of sole focus. It's this real multiple function that we're looking for in a community centre. The next thing is that we'd expect a community centre to have unparalleled local knowledge and well-established networks and connections into the community that they're actually physically based in. So it's that, you know, on your application, you'd need to demonstrate that you know your area, you've got connections with your area. And then you've got a mission to improve the whole of the community and not just a part. So it's not just a group that's been set up just to, for example, do arts and crafts. The actual community centre is an organisation that focuses on the whole community and what the community wants. And it's very much, the activities that are provided are very much based about what the community wants and what the local community need. And it's very much rooted in that really distinct geographical area. So in terms of key information, the amount that you can apply for is up to £25,000. In the guidance notes, we say above 10,000 and up to £25,000. That's just because we've just had a round of small grants, which are the £10,000 ones. Who can apply? So community centres, you must be a community centre based in Oldham and you must be a member of Action Together. So what I would say is that if you're a particular group with a particular purpose that uses a community centre, you're not the group to apply. It must be the actual community centre organisation that applies for the grant. The maximum project length, it must be delivered and funding must be spent by the end of March in 2025. And we're hoping to get grant agreements and money out as soon as possible so that the successful community centres have as long as possible to get the benefit from this grant. But the external panel that will be making the decisions will be on, we've set the date for the 27th of March 2024. And then obviously we'll note there may be sort of further questions that arise after that or further information needed. But we're really aiming for the start of April or as early as possible in April for funding to get out and be awarded. So the deadline for applications is 12 noon on Monday, the 11th of March 2024. This is only a single round. Quite a lot of our grants we do as a rolling programme, so people can apply for the money when they need it. But because there's going to be a lot of competition for this fund, it will be oversubscribed. We're looking to make probably around 6 awards in total, depending. It may be more, maybe less. Won't be less, but it may be more depending on who applies, what they apply for, how much they apply for. It just depends. But it's probably going to be around six awards. Um, any eligibility checks and things like that will be done internally before it goes to panel. So when we receive applications, we will come back to you if we've got any questions about your application, or if we need any further information before it goes to panel. So your community development working for your particular locality will be informed each step of the way, so they'll know what's going on in their area, but they'll know what's happening with the groups that they're working with, and they'll be in touch to discuss any queries, and we'll be in contact throughout the project to see if any further support's needed. So, for example, we could, put a condition in a grant that you need to work towards your Quality in Action Award if you've not already got it. So the development worker will be there to support you with that. And as I mentioned previously, there is an external panel we're made up with various partners, including the council. We attaching together are facilitating and advising this, but we're not actually part of the decision-making process. Well, we'll be sort of raising queries, doing the due diligence, asking any questions and facilitating the meeting. What we are going to do, what I will try and do, is for those applications that are considered to be eligible, after we've had our first sort of look at it, the applications and done any due diligence, we'll try to have a conversation with each of the applicants before it goes to panel, as I think sometimes that can bring out some other information that's not always on the application. But we can have a chat about that with each of the applicants. So what can the money be spent on? It's quite wide ranging, really, because it's about what you, as a community centre, need to keep going and work with the community, work with your community. So it can cover things like your organisation's running costs. It can cover small land or refurbishment projects. Just to be aware, however, that if it's a small land or refurbishment projects, we will need to look at sort of what kind of interest you've got in the building. So either if you own it or you've got a lease, we'd look at that, or at least have permission from the landlord or the owner to say that the works can be done. But we'll look at that on a case-by-case basis. And depending on the works doing, you may also just need to think about any planning consent. So we will be looking at that as well. The list's not exhaustive, however. So we've got other things like equipment, one-off events, staff costs, training costs, transport, volunteer expenses, but it's not exhaustive. So, just have a look. And if you've got any queries, just give us a shout, and we can sort of discuss that. There are things that we won't fund, however. So what we won't fund are things like contingency costs, loans, endowment, or interest payments. We won't pay for somebody to write the bid for you. We can support you on that action together. We won't write the bid for you, but we'll work with you to support you. We won't support profit or fundraising activities. So the purpose of this is to help you as an organisation. It's not for you to then raise money to sort of give to other groups. We can't fund VAT that you can reclaim. We can't fund things that are statutory activities. We can't fund reimbursement of money that's been spent. So if you've already started a project, incurred costs on that, we can't reimburse that. We reimburse things going forward. And we can't fund projects that have already been started. What we mean by that is really those retrospective costs that have already been incurred. We know a lot of times, especially when you're running a community centre, for example, it's just an ongoing activity or something like that. That's fine. What we just won't refund those things. Sort of, we won't pay for salaries retrospectively or anything like that. But again, if in doubt, just give us a shout. When we look at the application, just because we can't fund part of it doesn't mean we won't come and speak to you and then discuss it further with you. We are flexible. In terms of the application process, I've got put here a link to the guidance notes in the application form, and you will have already seen a link to that in the booking information and the information that's on our website that's been circulated for the grant. Please read these carefully. We've tried to make them as easy and as useful as possible, but if you've got any questions, please just bring us up and do ask. For this particular grant, we are asking that if you do have a business plan or anything like, for example, a funding strategy or anything like that, if you can provide it, if you've got one available, it won't prevent you from applying if you don't have one available, but it might be that we'll look at what you've got, where you're up to, and we could recommend, or the panel may recommend going forward that it's something as a condition of the grant you start to work to develop. If we feel that that's the position this organisation ought to be in, or it may just be that you've got a business plan and it needs updating and you need the support to do that. So it's not an absolute requirement, but if you've got one, send it through. It would help your case. And also we may sort of require some further development that or updating of that, or we'll look at that as part of the ongoing development, the support we can offer you. And like I said before, if the application is considered to be eligible in terms of that it is a community centre, we will have an informal discussion with you before we submit the panel. This discussion, it really is a chat. It's not to trip you up. It's not to sort of grill you. It really is just to have a conversation, find out a little bit more about some of the things you may have put in your application, and things quite often come to life more when you're having that conversation. And then, as I say, Action Together will be at the panel in an advisory capacity, so it makes it easy for us to maybe explain if the panel have some questions about particular aspects of an application. So it really is just to get as much information. It's not to trip you up anyway or test you in any way. It really is just a conversation. So if the community centre is successful in getting a grant, I mentioned before that a community development worker will be allocated to you. I think most people applying will have already be working very closely with the community development worker in their area. There may be several grant agreement conditions imposed, and this will be done on a case-by-case basis. So this may include things like doing one of our health checks if you've not already done one. It may include working towards a Quality in Action award if you've not already done one, or it may include updating a Quality in Action award or reviewing it if it's some time since you've completed one. We will be expected. We've just recently restarted our Oldham Community Centres Forum. So it will be expected that any successful applicants would be an active participant in that. The Community Centre Forum is basically people who work or run or manage community centres to come together. We're just in the process of finalising the terms of reference for that. But the key thing that has come out of it so far in terms of what groups and participants in that want is it's about skills sharing, sharing information, resource sharing. It's about really just coming together and working out how you can work together better. So it is definitely worth becoming part of that, but it will be an expectation if you do receive this grant that you'll be an active participant in it. We only tend to meet every 2 months, so it's not an onerous in terms of time, but it is there to help any groups, and it's very much about what the groups themselves want. Now, sorry, can you just excuse me? I'll just let somebody else in. Hi, Zakia.
Hello, sorry, I'm sorry I'm late. I'm in a car, so I can't put my camera on. Well, I can.
Okay.
It look a bit funny.
That's no problem. I am just recording this as a kid just to let you know. I'm just running through the terms of the grant. I will be circulating the slides, so anything you've missed will be there. And also we are recording it so you can also see a copy of the part of the recording you missed. We're just going through now.
Absolutely fine, yeah.
Terms of the grant. Once I've finished going through this bit, there'll be plenty of time for questions later. So please sort of chip in at the end if you've missed anything. That's absolutely fine. We're just going through now. We've just been going through what's successful. If a community centre is successful in receiving a grant, then what the requirements will be. One of the things that we did say earlier is that we do appreciate that things change throughout the funding period. So, things that you've anticipated at the beginning of your application will change, or circumstances change. So if anything does change, please do speak to us about it. We're very willing to, you know, change the terms of the grant agreement, and we want it to work. We want the funding to work for you as a community centre. So we are flexible. Please do speak to us. What we don't want you to do is just wait till the end. We will be sort of checking in with you throughout the process anyway, so hopefully it wouldn't come to that. But please just do ask if you've got any questions whatsoever about what you can use your money for, or if you want to change something, that's absolutely fine, as long as it fits with the priorities of the fund, of course. So in terms of monitoring requirements, we will check in during the funding period, and there will be a requirement for an end of grant report to be finished. But what that is very much about collecting the sort of usual data. But what we're really interested in is about you telling us your stories anyway, and you can do that in whatever way suits you. So there will be your sort of typical formal end of grant report at the end of the grant period, and we will send you the questions at the beginning of the grant period so you know what kind of things we're going to ask for. But what we've learned recently from talking to other groups is that they find it easier to collect information as they go along. You do that as part of your own work anyway, in terms of catching your own story. And we're more than happy to receive you telling us your story in any way whatsoever. Some people like to do videos, some people like to do blogs, some people send photos. You don't have to wait for us to contact you. If you've had a really good event and you really want to tell us a story, just send us information through as and when, and it becomes less onerous for you at the end of the grant period then. And I think sometimes it's easier to capture as you go along, and it makes more sense rather than trying to remember everything at the end of the project. But so please do, we're really interested in your story, not just the figures and what you've spent your money on. If you need any support with any of that, obviously, please do let us know. So I mentioned earlier the Oldham Community Centres Forum, and this is really any successful applicants. There will be an expectation that you become an active participant in that. It's really a forum where community centres, people who work or run or manage community centres, come together to share skills, experience and resources. And it's also about that peer support as well. We do meet every couple of months, but we're new. We're just finalising our terms of reference, and we're in the process of figuring out the best way for members of the forum to be able to communicate with each other, and for us to be able to share information with the forum as well. The next meeting is going to be at the OBA Millennium Centre on the 25th of April, 10 a.m. to 12 noon. It's quite late. It's later than usual, but we wanted to avoid the Easter holidays. So when I send the slides around, there is a link in there for you to book if you're interested in coming along. Even if you're not a successful applicant, please do join and come along and speak to some of the other groups that are there. Okay, so in terms of top tips, please read the guidance notes. They're there for a reason. And what we've tried to do is anticipate the questions you might ask, but please do read them. And if you've got any questions as you fill in the form in, or you're thinking about it, please do get in touch. We're always happy to have a chat with you about it. We don't want you to waste loads of time filling a form in to find out you're not eligible. And please answer the questions. I know that sounds really silly, but part of our open and trusted grant making process is that we only ask questions the questions that we want answers to. It's tempting to just try and stick as much information in an application form as you can sometimes, but that sometimes detracts from the story. So do answer the questions, and what you see when you get around to looking at the application form is that I've really tried to break it down into lots of different points. So, for example, the bit where you're saying, where are you a community centre? I've broken that each of those points in the definition down into a separate box, and I've asked you to explain, well, why do you think you fulfil this criteria? What is it about you that thinks you fulfil this criteria? Because that then it will enable us, when we're looking at the application forms, to make a decision about whether we think you are a community centre. And I know this sort of, there's lots of different sort of interpretations of what a community centre is, but we have to sort of look at the definition we've accepted here, so everyone's treated in the same way. And this particular fund, it's not a huge pot, so we need to just make sure it goes to the community centres that are fit with the priorities of this fund. Please provide a clear budget. That's the one thing panels always, always, always pick up on is the budgeting. Say, give as much detail as you can. If you're buying a piece of equipment, it's okay to include a link. If your example asking for fees to pay for a member of staff or to recruit somebody, then please provide a breakdown of how that's made up. For example, different organisations will quote an hourly rate for a development worker, for example, and one will be much higher than the other. But what they don't say in the application is, well, that might be higher, but that includes all the on costs, that includes training, it includes equipment. So just be really clear, because think of it, the people who are looking at the application form might have heard of you, but or they might not even have heard of you, but they won't necessarily know you really well. Assume that when you fill in the application in, that they don't know you. So don't assume that they'll know how you operate or, what kind of things you do. Just be as detailed and clear as possible, because that's where we get the most questions from panel members. But if you're not sure, ask. If you fill in the form in and it's anything you're not sure about, please do ask us. This is a new grant. We've not done one exactly the same as this before. And it will be oversubscribed. So the panel will be looking at all of them together in one go. So if you've got any questions before you fill your application form in, please do ask. We're here to help you. So I will be sending these slides around. So what I've put here are the contact details. So if you need help filling the form in, so it's not about sort of the terms of the grant, it's about that support you need. If you want somebody to, for example, I filled this in, can you have a read through for it for me, see what you think? Contact your development worker. If you don't know who your development worker is for your area, then if you email development at Action Together, then we can allocate somebody to you. If you have a specific funding question, if you contact the funding team. So initial point of contact is Candice. A lot of you will already speak to Candice in relation to previous grants that you had from us, or you can contact myself. I'm the programs manager, and the phone number I've put there for you as well.